Do you remember that CRPG called Glasshouse, the one that we've been developing for almost 4 years without any kind of budget? Well, some wild thing happened since the last devlog.
Glasshouse by FLAT28 Collective!
Nomination and win for FLAT28 Collective at the DevGam Awards.
We are noobs, master of none, and these past months were our first time for many things. Our first Gamescom, our first awards, and most importantly, our first playtests. Hands-on sessions, bursts of laughter, raised eyebrows and feedback. The kind that hurts, the kind that, if taken the right way, can make you a little bit more professional. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the importance of feedback, from A/B testing to the deeply emotional side of developing an indie game and putting it into other people's hands. But most of all, how do you turn feedback into better games? Feedback, from a game design perspective, is the art of listening. Of sitting for a moment in the backseat of a very small car, one that's tight on your ego, and watching the others, the people you actually want to sell the game to, drive in the opposite direction of what you imagine in your bedroom. If the game designer is the puppeteer of the dynamics that push the player to feel emotions, the moment of feedback is when you realize the strings were never attached in the first place. You can guide a player, but you can never control them. Feedback can be brutal, and 90% of the time, it doesn't even come from game devs like us. Or even from players who know the context or have a theoretical background. And that's fine. Consumers are meant to consume, and their gut reactions will reflect those of the people who paid for your product. And who have every right to criticize it. Every piece of feedback matters, even the one-star review, because the game isn't localized in their language. At the same time though, it's just as important to contextualize it, to avoid getting stuck on the tracks waiting for the train of negativity to hit you over and over again. After almost 4 years of development, we decided to show the game to the public, but not without precautions. We took a section of Act 1 of Glasshouse and chose to distribute it across 3 different time windows: Gamescom, a private Discord playtest, and a public Steam playtest. Roughly 2 months separated each playtest. Enough time to test reaction from different target audiences and to implement substantial changes to the game systems. While Gamescom was perfect for testing the mainstream niche, from visual hooks to overall pacing, the Discord playtest was ideal for extracting detailed insights from our core audience. Having your own community during development is exactly about this. If you manage to build loyalty even before release, you gain access to a goldmine of information from people who truly know your genre. So don't ignore them, value the time they spend criticizing the game, because they want your game to succeed just as much as you do. Now, when it comes to feedback, there are mainly 2 ways to gather it. Attend an event, invite a friend over, put the controller in their hands, and shut the f*** up. Don't influence the tester in any way. Watch them, let them get lost on the golden path you designed. Take notes on the moment where the players get bored and track how many times they open the journal to check the quest. Or be a hacker and build a Google form that pops up every time the player closes the application. It's that simple, and yet not many developers do it, mostly out of fear, or they do it when it's already too late to fix anything. This is why, with our first game, we decided to do it early, first in the prototyping stage, and now again in the pre-alpha.
Yeah, combat was an absolute mess, mostly because we had to subvert players' expectations coming from other classic turn-based systems. And explaining those twists without forcing players to read through walls of text that, let's be honest, nobody reads, was not easy at all. One of the biggest was the talk system. In Glasshouse you can talk your way out of combat even after combat has already started. How do you do that? Well, you use talk options that resonate with the opponent, which means options that are aligned to their strength and not how most other titles do, their weaknesses. And while this makes sense from a theoretical and realistic point of view, it's extremely hard to explain to players effectively. We wanted a system that was small but interesting, something that felt organic, part of the narrative experience, not separate from it. We brainstormed, designed, prototyped, implemented, and then found out it didn't really work. Players weren't understanding why certain actions dealt damage or why others did nothing at all. Tooltips were barely there. Visual feedback was unclear, and the game wasn't communicating its own logic well enough. Then the playtest came in, and the feedback was gold. It was brutal. It showed us exactly what players didn't get, what frustrated them the most, and how much of that was on us. To get there, we stopped, listened, started mapping it out. Sometimes a player's gut feeling tells you something is wrong, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it, and that was the key. It's like looking at a blank map with only the X marked. You know where you need to go, but the rest of the path you have to draw yourself.
So I don't know if you remember, but there was this quest of Feast for Foods where the player had to pick up some rations and deliver them to the neighbors. And then, like a bolt from the blue, you suddenly find yourself in a room with 3 corpses. And Jesus Christ, I still remember that during the Gamescom and Discord playtest, some players would walk out of the apartment without the rations. And that's a problem when the murder discovery is triggered by the delivering of the rations itself.
Yeah, we were reading the feedback, and a lot of people were asking things like, swear the murderer, or I can tell if I finished the game or not.
And that's a problem, right? It was clear back then that we were facing a golden path problem. That sequence of landmarks, dialogue spaces, and lighting meant to guide the player toward the next narrative beat. And I think that in trying to handle it elegantly, we ended up withholding too much information, causing the players to get lost in the flow.
I remember that right after Gamescom, we immediately tried to course correct, first by working on the lighting, guiding the player eye toward the next steps. We started, I think, by lighting the spiral staircase and then the restroom, but it wasn't enough. I think that we also added a sign reading Light Train to make the door stand out from the other 2, to give it more narrative weight.
And even that wasn't enough, because if you think about it, narratively speaking, people didn't perceive the urgency of the quest as a first assignment, so we added a trigger at the door exit where the schwa reminds you of your duties as Deputy Condo Chief.
Yeah, and the combination of all these changes helped the following sim playtest tremendously, even though I think the pacing can be improved further, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, maybe it's a stretch, but I think that maybe we should just remove the rations trigger altogether and turn it into a fake main quest.
Yeah.
To put things into perspective, around 3,000 people took part in the playtest, and we received a nearly 300 completed Google form. With an average playtime of 42 minutes and data pointing to our strengths in writing, world building and art direction, the 3-phase playtest experiment can be considered a success. Not only did we confirm that there's a genuine interest in what we have created, but we have now enough data to turn untapped potential into something meaningful. From requests for more inventory space to greater freedom of approaching quest, we know where and how to act. Glasshouse was born out for a need of expression, as an act of resistance against the relentless passage of time and against masses lost in an hyper-polarizing storm. With you, today we are less alone than yesterday, and we can never thank you enough for giving us a chance to exist in front of your eyes.
Sometimes that's the whole shit.
I'm playing this. Yeah, I'm gonna play this.
Well, that might be necessary for rolling a joint then.
Sick! Absolutely sick!
Look at Glass House, an upcoming...
My dogs can't look up. They can. What?
Who is this?
That is insane writing. The eyes were injected with coagulated blood. Isabel's face was completely red, but without any sign of physical violence. Inspect the bed sheets.